The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect the policies and the position of Now You Know.
Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint. Together with experts and news makers, we make sense of the week's biggest issues and stories. I'm Barnaby Lo. In tonight's conversation,
the lower house has passed a bill that its proponents say gives the government's anti-drug campaign more teeth, but that critics argue removes the presumption of innocence on the accused. The proposed law lists a number of presumptions on who may be considered an importer, financier, or protector of illegal drugs. It also states that anyone spotted within the vicinity of an illegal drug trade is presumed to be involved, unless proven otherwise. Human rights advocates and dissenting lawmakers say the bill undermines the Constitution and is a march back to the Dark Ages. The passage of the bill comes right on the heels of a Justice Department report that has found police negligence in conducting the drug war. There is no counterpart bill in the Senate so far.
and joining us tonight for this discussion on this very controversial new anti-drug bill that the lower house has just passed is former Commission on Human Rights Chair Etta Rosales. Good evening, Mameta. How are you?
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, Barnaby. I'm fine. What about you?
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And later on the show, we will also have the main author of House Bill 7814, Congressman Robert Ace Barbers. And that will be after our interview with former Chair Etta Rosales. All right, Ma'am Etta, let's start. And I had wanted you to the explanations of Congressman Barbers. I wanted to give him the opportunity first to explain his bill, but unfortunately, he can't make 6 p.m., so he will make 6:30. Anyway, all right. I think and let me know if you agree or not, but I think everyone agrees, every Filipino agrees that we need to solve the drug menace in this country,
Yes,
right?
of course. Yes. No problem there.
But right. But do you agree? Because Congressman Barber said that he authored this law because our current laws, and in particular the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, does not have teeth. So, I mean, is that the case? Is that the problem?
No, the problem, in fact, it does need reforms. No doubt about it. The Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002 needs reforms. And the
Hmm.
first provision that has to be amended is the provision that criminalizes a drug user, because that explains the entire philosophy of how you look at the drug problem. Do you look at
Mhm.
it as a public health problem, or do you look at it as a criminal problem? That's what it's
Mhm.
all about. So we felt, Ace was still with, I was with Ace during the time when it was Representative Cuenca, who was the one who was authoring the Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. We were both in Congress. As I had told you, he belonged to the Spice Boys pa nga noon, di ba? Which was
Yes.
centuries ago. Yeah, it was a long, long time ago.
Centuries, decades.
um, Decades ago. Okay. So decades ago. But that was then. And I felt, and even, we all felt that the law had to be amended. It had to be amended, but because you don't treat the use of drugs as a criminal problems, you have to decriminalize that, but you have to look at it as a public health problem. Yung
Okay.
mga nagdodroga,
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm just to be the devil's advocate because Congressman Ace is not here to defend himself or to defend his bill. Ang sinasabi kasi niya, his motivation for these amendments ay yung criticism ng public that the drug war is only targeting the users, which is your criticism, right? And
mhm.
with these amendments, tatamaan na yung mga big fish, yung source ng drugs. Do you agree?
Paano? Diba paano
Um,
tatamaan yung mga yan? Oh, paano?
okay. So according to him and according to his statement, so the bill penalizes those who are involved in transactions, um, those who own the warehouses or the labs where these drugs are made. So for example, yung mga ganun po, which hindi daw po, according to him, ay hindi kasama doon sa Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002.
Okay, fine. But make sure that you have evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt, because this is a criminal offense, that they're doing beyond beyond reasonable doubt that guilty yung tao. Kung halimbawa financier siya, kailangan ipalabas mo na talagang financier siya. I mean, it's a criminal offense. This is all about the due process. Presumption of innocence is, I think, the problem here. I think the central issue here is the principle of presumption of innocence, which is a basic constitutional law. And I
So
think
that
this
is your
is what
problem with this bill,
everybody is up against. Yeah.
that it presumes guilt.
Yeah,
Your problem.
presumption of innocence. You have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, no, that the person is guilty. That means to say you have to do your homework. You have to gather evidence. You have to conduct thorough investigations. You gotta have witnesses to show that whoever you are accusing as being related to the illicit drug activity is guilty, is related to that. Yeah.
And you think that this bill violates that principle, the
Yeah.
principle of presumption of innocence.
Yes.
You've yeah,
Because
and
it
you've read
talks
the bill,
about
right?
presumption.
Yeah.
Huh? Have you read, if you read the bill, it talks about if you are presumed being a financier, etc., and you have caused the etc., etc. No? I mean, let's go into that. Ang daming presumptions eh. Kaya,
Yes, 20 presumptions is how many they are. That is a figure that was given by Human Rights Chair of Congress, Attorney Bong Suntay. So I didn't
yeah,
count. I mean, I read the bill, but I didn't count. But he said 20 presumptions. Yeah. So if you read the bill, and I don't know if we can show it, but we did show it during the beginning of the show. The highlighted parts, the ones that have all caps, all say a person is presumed to be a financier. A person is presumed to be a protector or cuddler.
yeah.
A person is, a person who shields, harbors, facilitates the escape of, is presumed to be involved. So just
So there are
so,
so many presumptions. Okay, there are so many multiple presumptions, and on the basis of the presumption, they come out with provision that says then you are guilty. You are guilty. It goes, kaya ikakuha ganon, the language is so ambiguous. And what it does, as pointed out by one lawyer, is that it lowers the bar of burden of evidence. Because on the basis of multiple presumptions, then a person accused is already proven guilty. And sabi nga niya, you can go into the flimsiest reason, like you happen to be there when there was this drug dealing that was taking place. And because you were there, when there was a deal that was taking place, you happen to be there, you could be guilty. If there is no
is
other
that
evidence other than the fact that you were there, sorry ka na lang. So
Is
you
that the
have to
provision
prove
that
that
jumps
you're
out
innocent.
is that the
Huh?
provision that jumps out at you the most? That provision, that's section 5. That's section 5A. Is
Yeah,
that the one that jumps out at you the
it's
most?
very flimsy. Yeah, it's very
Uh,
flimsy. But actually, all the other presumptions are presumptions. The point is, I think the principle here is in any criminal offense, the prosecutor has to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you have you are guilty because the
mm,
evidence is strong against you. You've got witnesses. You've gone through a fair trial, and then there's mandatory production of evidence against you. All of this should prove that you are guilty. Pero
okay.
wala na yun eh. Wala na yun.
Pagka po
And
bang
so,
sinabing, I know you're not a lawyer, but your understanding of presumption. Pagka sinabing presumption is wala pong, hindi kailangan mag-present ng evidence. So they're just presuming that this or
oh,
that person is already
oh,
involved
oh,
based on the circumstances around the person. Is that your understanding?
of course. Kaya yung presumption of innocence is very important because as pointed out by jurisprudence, there was a very nice definition of the Supreme Court. I think that was Lagmay versus the people of the Philippines. There was
Mhm.
this jurisprudence definition that says that um, you know the presumption of innocence is not just a procedural tool. In other words, it's substantive. You have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the evidence is there and the evidence is strong. Because what you are trying to do is to try to, you know, balance the scale against an individual who is accused versus the entire peoples of the Republic of the Philippines. In other words, the entire machinery of government.
Mm.
So if the poor individual does not even have the resources, much less the money to pay a good lawyer, kawawa naman siya.
Are you saying na ang mahihirap na naman ang kawawa po dito? Is that what you're
Siyempre,
saying?
exactly. Kasi pag presumption of innocence, the prosecutor has to prove beyond reasonable doubt na guilty siya. Eh hindi ba ang daming mga tao na nakukulong at na i-imprison sila indefinitely kasi wala silang abogado, na wala
Mm.
silang kakayanan na magbayad sa abogado. As a matter of fact, mabuti nga kung buhay sila at arestado sila. Ang illegal drug law, no, yung law against illegal drugs that is ongoing right now does not even give them the chance to remain alive and in prison. They in fact are killed dahil daw ng laban. This is the law that we have.
But isn't
Barnaby.
it ironic? But isn't it ironic when you say that na yung mga mahihirap na naman yung tatamaan dito? But Congressman Barber says specifically na ang motivation niya for authoring these amendments ay para mahuli yung mga malalaking isda.
Ang tanong ko nga, papaano? Kung yung presumption of innocence, hindi binibigyan ng kahalagahan. Yung due process has to be respected. The principle has to be respected. And precisely, what is wrong with our judicial system, I mean the justice system, or put it this way, sorry, the enforcement of the drug law, the Dangerous Drugs Law Act right now, is that it, negates due process.
Hmm.
Eh, yung mga nang lalaban nga, kaya ang daming pinapatay. Yun at yun na lamang. So, that's one. That's one reason. Another reason that I will say is this, no? So yung it's not a procedural law lamang. Substantive yan. At I cited to you the definition of the Supreme Court. Number two, what it does is it encourages, when I talk about due process, I mentioned that to you already, hindi
Yeah.
sasapat na sasabihin mo lamang na ikaw, guilty ka. Kasi we think that kasama ka doon sa bypass, doon sa bypass operations, nahuli ka, nandun ka kasi, di ba? So, para matiyak mo na guilty yung isang tao, nabanggit ko na sa iyo, kailangan may witnesses yan, kailangan mandatory yung ebidensya, kailangan may fair trial, kinakailangan mandatory na yung accused can look at the witnesses face to face. At dapat naku-question yan. At yung accused should be heard with a counsel. At dapat yung accused, in fact, outside of having a counsel, and having yung being heard, must go through a free and fair trial and speedy trial. Dapat daanan niya lahat-lahat yan. Yan ba nangyayari ngayon? So yun ang tinatawag na due process. Now let me go to a third question. The third question is, what this thing does is it invites, kasi presumption and presumption of evidence, ang daming presumptions Natatawa nga ako pag binabasa ko yung oppositionist. Dami-dami naman yung presumption na yan, kanilang ganon, di ba? So lahat itong presumptions na ito, when you sum them all up, this is enough to put you in jail, to make you guilty. But you have to prove that you are in fact innocent because it relies on just presumptions. So what it does is this, it makes for lazy evidence gathering. It likewise makes for lazy conduction of thorough investigations. That is what happens. And if you do that, sino ang gagawa nun? Yung pulis. Yung mga pulis, sa presumption lang pala aasa. So, itay na lamang nila itong mga presumptions na ito. Hindi na sila gagawa ng homework nila. Hindi na nila tatrabahuhin ang mag-gather ng information, ang mag-conduct ng mga investigations. Hindi na nila gagawin yan. Antayin na lang nila itong mga presumptions na nakalagay dito sa batas na ito. And with this shoddy, illegal, type of work by the policeman, if this law is passed, it rewards shoddy, lazy performance by the policeman. Instead
are you saying dadami po yung mga nanlaban cases? Are you saying dadami pa po yung mga patayan? Are you saying this bill could legitimize those things that are already happening?
Of course. Because the principle that is being violated is a fundamental constitutional principle, the presumption of innocence. And we're not just talking about suspected drug lords here. It can be anybody and everybody.
Okay.
That is what it's all about.
Right. Pero ito po yung sinasabi ni Congressman Barbers. Ang sinasabi naman niya, hindi naman daw po violative of the principle of the presumption of innocence because the suspects will have a chance to present their evidence in court, and the prosecution will still have to prove beyond reasonable doubt their accusations against the suspect, and it will be a trial judge who will be making the decision. So, in effect, what he's saying is that it will go through the whole gamut of the legal process.
May I ask you, over the 4 years ba? How long has Duterte been in position?
Almost 5 years.
Almost 5 years. In all these 5 years, has that ever happened? Outside of Kian, huh? Because Kian was caught with the CCTV. Tsaka na, they were caught with their pants down. So, outside of Kian, was there ever any fair trial?
That was the only trial that I covered. That started and then ended.
Okay. And the rest have been EJKs, right?
Yeah.
So what are we talking about?
Okay. So you don't obviously agree with Congressman Barbers na
Well, I'm asking you, Barnaby. I'm asking you. What do you think?
what do I think? Nako, mahirap tayo dyan. So what do I think? Baka ma-accuse ako ng, ng bias. Uh, but, suffice it to say that, from what I have covered from 2016 all the way to now, I have seen due process skipped, and I have seen suspicious circumstances of, evidence planted. That's all I
Yeah,
could say.
yeah,
Things that
yeah.
we see
Planting of evidence. Yeah.
the things that we see on the ground. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I'm just saying that those are the things that we see. I'm not expressing my opinion here, but those are the things that I've
Yeah,
seen covering this drug war. That's all.
yeah, yeah. And we have to add something more. Given the fact that very recently there's been a lot of skirmish between the PDEA and the PNP over who was conducting the legitimate by bust operations,
Mm.
and the good Lord knows who was conducting what was legitimate and what was illegitimate, or were they both legitimate, or there have been so many jokes about them already. But given that situation, don't you think these lawmakers should focus on, hey, you guys, you
Mm.
better shape up, you better clean yourselves, you better, bring about
On,
change.
on
We
that
can't,
though,
yeah,
yeah, on that specific incident though, Congressman Barbers has said na kung meron sana ng batas na ito, then we would have known easily what transpired there, because under these amendments as well, kasama yung requirement ng body cam, which is something that everybody has been asking for a long
excuse
time.
me, excuse me, that body cam has been asked for, as you pointed out, years ago. Did they
Mm.
ever implement it? So, what makes us think that once this law is passed, it will be implemented in accordance? Which is not to say that I agree with it. Because outside of that, it's even pointing to, sabagay si Ace has always been with that, yung death penalty. And I disagree with him there. No,
Mm.
he believes in death penalty, and no matter how many times we say that death penalty is not a deterrent to crime, and it has already been proven time and again through research and
Mm.
through practice that it is not a deterrent. O eto na lamang yung death penalty. They've been committing death penalties right and left. Actually, EJ case, di ba? They've been killing all the people. Natatakot ba? Andi pa naman yung drugs. Natatakot ba yung assuming that the hapless dwellers, the informal settlers, the poor people, were the ones who were guilty of all these illegal drugs and so on and so forth. Ang dami na nilang pinatay.
Mm.
Eh, bakit ang dami-dami pang droga? That is why Senator Ping Lacson is so correct. And I was really happy that it had to take a Senator Ping Lacson, who happens to be a former police director general, who knows
Mm.
what it's all about. That's why I was so happy nung siya nagsabi it's a failure. And why is it a failure? Hanggang ngayon, andyan pa ang shabu. Hindi naman nawawala yan.
Mm.
So what are you talking about? Come on, that's just 4 years too long. How many people have been killed?
Okay, we're running out of time, so I only have a couple more questions for you. So Senator Ping Lacson, since you already mentioned him, he is against this bill, and he's saying that he thinks that the Senate, majority of the senators, will not concur to this bill. Now the
That's good.
CHR, now the CHR is saying that this bill is, they've gone as far as to say that this bill is unconstitutional. Do you agree with that?
Of course, I just said it to you in the first sentence. I said it's unconstitutional. It's really
Uh,
unconstitutional.
okay. And the last question is the report by the Justice Department. And this has got nothing to do with this, maybe a little bit, but before this bill came out and was approved by the lower house, I'm sure you're aware that the Justice Department came out with its review of the drug war, and it was a pretty damning review, if I may say, of police negligence in its investigations of the killings in the drug war. What is your opinion on this? Because then there are critics who say naman na this is the Philippine government covering its ass.
I didn't even say it that way, but don't you think it's a bit too late after 6,000 killings? Then you come up and say, oops, mukhang nagkakamali sila. There are lapses after 6,000 lives killed. And I don't care if they are petty pushers or petty users. They are human beings. And each and every one of the 6,000 lives, and I'm using PNP facts and figures. I'm not even using what are considered much, much more than 6,000. Using PNP figures. 6,000 lives have to be lost before you can come up and say there are lapses in the police performance.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
So it's not better late than never.
It's not better late than never. And the prior argument that you gave, you remember that the ICC has said that there is, in fact, basis for preliminary investigation to take place because of the killings that have taken place. So it follows. They did not even include the CHR in this, although they said so when they were in Geneva. But now they did not include the CHR in the investigation. Although Menardo, Secretary Menardo was correct in saying that there were lapses. Tama naman yung facts and figures niya. Except that it came 5 years a bit late, or 4.5 years. Let's be precise.
All right. Okay. So that's all the time we have for this first half of the show. Thank you very much, former CHR Chair Etta Rosales, for joining us tonight. We have to move on to our next guest. Our next guest is Congressman Robert Ace Barbers. He is the chair of the House Committee on Dangerous Drugs. He is the principal author of House Bill 7184, which is what we have been discussing for the past half hour. Good to see you, Congressman Barbers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Barnaby, and I hope Ma'am Etta is still around to be able to listen to what we're going to talk about.
Sige
But
po.
I'm glad to see her. No, she never aged. But again, going back to you, thank you for having me.
Tama ka dyan, Congressman Barbers. She never aged, and you also never age. Spice Boys. Spice
Tama,
Boys.
tama.
Parang college yata ako nun eh. Yung Spice
Old
Boys.
Spice na ngayon.
Old Spice na ba?
Yeah.
All right, okay. I don't know how much you heard from Ma'am Etta, so I'm just gonna start with because I don't know how much you heard from her, so I can't ask you to react to what she said, you know. So I'm just gonna start with the reason, you authored these amendments to the Comprehensive Dangers Act of 2002.
Okay. First of all, we'd like we were proposing all these amendments in order to give more potent legal tool, no? A potent legal tool to help our law enforcers and our prosecutors in not just arresting but eventually convicting the people, big personalities behind this drug syndicate. We're talking about drug lords. We're talking about narco politicians, narco cops, narco generals, narco judges, narco prosecutors, and all those behind the proliferation of illegal drugs in the country that was never brought to justice, no? And simply because the law that we are using right now does not have these kinds of potent legal tools. And that is the reason why we pushed for the legal presumptions to be able to run after all these big-time personalities behind this syndicate.
So,
So,
ang target nyo dito sa mga amendments na ito is yung mga tinatawag nating big fish, malalaking isda, mga drug lords, mga big time
you said
na
it.
mga
You said
trust
it right, Barnaby. Yeah.
sectors. Pero and I'll tell you, baka hindi mo nadinig sinabi ni Ma'am Etta eh. She thinks na she doesn't believe na these amendments ay makakatulong sa paghuli ng mga drug lords. She thinks na mga mahihirap pa rin yung tatamaan dito because sila sa justice system daw natin in general, laging mga mahihirap yung mga defenseless.
Well, I will not debate now with Ma'am Etta about that. No, I know for a fact that there are some loopholes and flaws in our justice system. Pero this is a different subject matter, Barnaby. This subject matter is just proposing a law that will be used by our law enforcers, our prosecutors, and even our judges, in prosecuting and eventually convicting those people that are doing such illegal crimes. The reason why I said this is going to run after the big personalities is because sino ba yung presumed importer, exporter, financier? Hindi naman ito yung tao sa baba eh. Diba? Kasi ang laging nanghuli, those that are always apprehended, put to jail, are those ordinary street peddlers. What about the guys who own the Shabu laboratories? What about those condominium units, those houses that they rented out to people with or without their knowledge being used as a clandestine Shabu laboratory? What about the cuddlers, protectors? A certain narco general calls a SPO1, an ordinary SPO1, saying, "Hey, SPO1, you release Ace Barbers from even if they caught me, release him because he's my guy, he's my man. So release him." And using his influence and power and authority, the poor SPO1 releases the suspect. So if you look at the law and you study it, you will see that this does not intend to run after the ordinary peddlers or street peddlers. Because we're specific. I'm sorry?
So you don't think na possibly gagamit sila ng front. So for example, we've had a case na, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think 6.4 billion pesos worth of shabu, and yung caretaker lang ng warehouse ang inaresto.
Ang inaresto, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
Now,
so that's presumably would be a case of affront. Kasi siya
that's
lang yung
correct.
tao doon. Yes.
That's tama. You're correct. But in this case, because of this legal disputable presumption, we can already presume that the guy who rented or leased that warehouse is also involved in this 6.4 billion shabu importation. So at the present, we cannot. We're just good at probably maybe filing a complaint. Oh, probably Mr. So and so who leased this property, this warehouse is where eventually we found shabu is involved in shabu importation. The poor caretaker, when the police raided the place, was the only guy inside the area. He is the only person who has effective, active management and control of the place. So, at present, he will be the one that will be pinned down. What about his boss? What about those that rented the place? There's no potent legal tool that we can use at present. That's why we are allowing legal disputable presumption so that we can also charge them to court. and let them defend themselves by providing contrary evidence so that they can prove that they're not guilty.
But what
That's the
evidence?
beauty of this. I'm sorry?
But with what evidence do we presume these people, involved in the drug trade?
Okay, you're correct. No, in this case, kasi we are not presuming. What we are presuming is the commission of the prohibited act, the unlawful act. No, we're not presuming any Tom, Dick, or Harry just because he owns the place or he rented the place. He's already involved. There are elements that needs to be proven first, and when these facts are proven, then it will give rise to a presumption. The presumption being, in this case, in your example, is the presumption of being an importer. Kasi remember, galing yan sa customs, di ba? Dinala diretso sa warehouse. So, now who takes the blame for being the importer? Is it the customs broker? Is it the guy that makes bantay the warehouse, or the guy that leased the warehouse? At present, we can charge the bantay, maybe ask him to squeal and spill the beans. But if he's prepared not to do that, then we're facing a blank wall.
Pero evidence presented after the fact, after the arrest, or is it? I mean, because normally you would have to
Yeah.
have evidence first before you arrest. You would have to have a search warrant, and you would have to have uh, an
No,
arrest warrant.
remember, Barnaby, there must be an unlawful act first, a predicate crime, before the presumptions will come into play. You can never presume someone of doing something if he has not violated anything. So there should be some sort of a violation, an unlawful act that he has committed. Diba? Assuming I caught Ace Barbers in his possession, no, shabu, worth 200 grams. Then I catch him, files a case against him for possession. But more than possession, because he has 200 grams in his pocket, under the law, this proposed law, if you have 200 grams or more, then you're not just going to be charged for possession. You will also be charged for selling. Because the presumption is, if you have 200 grams in your pocket, which is beyond normal consumption, beyond normal human consumption, then what is that extra drug doing with you? So you're probably
And,
selling.
and if he
That,
squeals names, kasali po ba yan sa presumption?
hindi pa rin. Kasi even if he names Tom, Dick, or Harry, no, that's a different case. If Tom, Dick, or Harry commits another unlawful act or any of the prohibited acts, then they could also be charged. Remember, the legal presumptions are only being used, no, for the commission of the prohibited act. Hindi ho tayo nagpe-presume ng guilt ng anyone that has not violated any of the provisions of the law. Yun nga eh. Kaya nga sinasabi ko kanina, I'm sorry, I was late and I wasn't able to hear what Ma'am Etta was saying. But they're getting it all wrong. Eh. Akala nila if a police officer presumes Ace Barbers is already a seller, then without any violation on the act, there was no arrest made kay Ace Barbers, pwede na kaagad, there's already presumption of guilt. There is nowhere in this law that says we allow presumption of guilt because we know this is unconstitutional. We know this is a violative of the constitutional guarantee of presumption of innocence. And we will never craft or write a law that would violate that. Just to
Pero
give you some legal basis on this particular proposal. Marami ng jurisprudence ang Supreme Court. In all the cases in several cases that the Supreme Court has decided, they allowed the use of legal presumptions. Even our existing laws, our existing statutes today, as I speak, even in this old law in 9165 on Section 12, they allow legal presumptions. Australia, Canada, United States of America, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, they're all using legal presumptions in their drug war. What makes the Philippines different in our drug war? Because we don't have this kinds of provisions in our laws. Maybe
If
in
I may,
other
Congressman
countries,
Barbers, if I may, Congressman Barbers,
sige.
what makes it different for the Philippines? I think you're aware that the DOJ has come out with a report on a review
Yeah. Mm,
on the drug war,
mm.
and this, I would say, although it's late, Ma'am Etta said it's late, but it's a pretty damning review
Yeah.
of how the
Agree.
police conducted the drug war. And I would say that, if critics say that that would be the difference between the Philippines and Singapore or all those other countries, then wouldn't you say that's a valid concern?
Well, I cannot blame those who are criticizing this proposal. Maybe because it's a known fact, no, that there are abuses committed, there are lapses committed by law enforcers. In fact, one of the main reason why cases are dismissed is because there was some sort of a bungling committed by the law enforcer. No? Maybe he reduced the amount of the evidence, or maybe he did not appear before a court trial, or maybe he did not present a witness, and things like that, no? And things like that. So will I would just have to say probably to all those who are criticizing this proposal, including Ma'am Etta, no, that number one, legal presumptions are disputable presumptions. Legal presumptions we are proposing here are not the same as the presumption of guilt. We will never allow that. We will never allow a presumption of guilt because the Constitution is very clear. No, you are innocent unless proven otherwise. Why would we come up with a law that would already presume the guilt of someone? Di ba?
Okay,
So,
with all due respect, Congressman,
mm,
when I read the bill, I
mm,
didn't count. I didn't count how many times the word presumed was used.
mm,
So, on the face of it, when you read the bill and you see a lot of provisions that say, a person is presumed a protector or cuddler, a person is presumed to be a financier, and so on and so forth, it does look like it is a presumption of, or these are presumptions of guilt.
well, yeah, I think if you're in that frame of mind, because it doesn't say that the law is presuming the guilt of the accused. Legal presumptions or presumptions that, let's say, for instance, you're presumed to be a cuddler, there must be some elements that has to be proven first. Yan na yung trabaho ngayon ng yan na yung trabaho ngayon ng prosecutor. 'Di ba? If the police will say tell the prosecutors, the fiscal, oh, see, Barnaby is a seller, but there's no evidence to prove the claims of the police, then that automatic the prosecutor would say, no, that's not true because there's no evidence to back your claim. So I will dismiss the case against Barnaby. So
But
so there's
the accused has to prove himself innocent. He has to
no.
produce evidence to.
Remember, you are being accused because you have committed an unlawful act. You are being accused because you have violated the law. Di ba? And because you violated the law, there are other elements with the circumstances, an overt act or whatever circumstances present that will prove your involvement in that act committed will be now weighed by the prosecutor. Remember, pag prosecutor kasi, probable cause lang. Diba? If he feels that there's enough reasonable ground to believe that Barnaby is involved in a unlawful act because he was apprehended, may apprehension ito he was arrested, then he could be charged for several crimes.
Pero I'm sorry for pushing this issue, no?
Yeah, yeah,
Pero
sure.
yung the fact na sa simula pa lang, you're already presumed na, you're involved in this crime, and
Mm-mm.
you will have to prove that you are not involved, is
Mm-mm.
isn't that a presumption of guilt of the accused?
No.
Because then the burden of proof is going to be on the accused, right? And you were actually saying iba yung burden of proof and burden of evidence, pero hindi ko po naiintindihan what
Oo,
you mean.
sige. Okay. You will again, I will repeat, no. Presumptions will only arise, no, after several or after elements have been proven or proven facts. No? May mga proven facts muna. Just for example, halimbawa, there's this guy, an army officer caught inside a clandestine shabu laboratory, or police officer caught inside a clandestine shabu laboratory. And when the PDEA came in, they saw that there's this sergeant, no, that was inside. No, so they included him in the charge. Because what are you doing inside there? Diba? So, ni-raid yun, all those people within active and effective control and management of the place is presumed to be involved. Correct? Now, isa-isahin yun, interviewin yun ng police. What is your involvement in? Ako wala ho, nandito lang ako, nagsisigarilyo lang ako sa labas ng pintuan eh. So, ikaw ngayon, police will say, okay, sige, si Barnaby is just smoking outside, the others are inside, trying, testing the shabu. So, si Barnaby has no knowledge that there was shabu inside. Diba? So, pwede ka nang sabihin ng police, ng fiscal na, si Barnaby has nothing. We don't have anything against Barnaby. It just so
Pero
happened he was just there
arrested.
passing.
Considered arrested na po or in-interrogate lang? Because
Interrogate ka muna. Interrogate ka muna. If they feel that they have enough evidence against your involvement in that clandestine laboratory, then they will charge you. Then if they charge you, the fiscal will say, yes, there's reasonable ground that the Barnaby could be charged because he's involved, then arrested ka. Yun yun.
okay,
So there must be an unlawful act committed by Barnaby first before other presumptions will come into play.
okay. Using that example that you gave, that situation, I think this is what Congressman Rufy Biazon was talking about. And Congressman Rufy Biazon was an author of the bill, and then he withdrew. And this morning, he tweeted that what stands out for him is section 3, which states that unless proven otherwise, any person found or is present within the immediate vicinity of the area of sale, trading, marketing, dispensation, delivery, or distribution is presumed to have been involved in the sale, trade, or distribution of dangerous drugs. So let's say, for example, Congressman, let's use the ever grotesco, the ever incident between PIDEA and PNP. And there were a lot of people there. A lot of people. So kung ikaw ay nasa yung sasakyan where na pinagbabaril ng PNP at ikaw ay nasa kabilang sasakyan, pwede kang mapagbintangan na kasali ka sa transaction.
Hindi. If you follow the example of Rufy Biazon, maaari, maaari. Because ito yun eh. You can only be charged if there was an overt act or there was an unlawful act committed by you. Diba? May nagbebentahan ng shabu sa McDonald's, no? At ikaw, there seems to be the guy selling, the guy buying, and ikaw naman nasa may pintuan ka, you're acting like a lookout so that walang police makakita sa inyo. So, meron kang ginawa. Meron kang overt act. And that has to be proven. Hindi ibig sabihin na nakita ka, oy, lookout na kaagad ito. No. There has to be some sort of a violation that you have committed. Some prohibited act that you have committed.
Okay, I mean, I might be wrong, but that's not in the bill. It's not.
It is in the bill. It is
Explicitly stated. It says any person found or is present within the immediate vicinity of the area.
Oh, yeah. Within the immediate vicinity of the area. No,
Because it's
pero sabi ko nga kanina, before a presumption will come into play, there must be some overt act. It probably pwede kayong imbitahin ng pulis. O teka muna, anong ginagawa mo rito? Nagbebenta ng shabu dyan sa gilid eh. So
right.
anong ginagawa mo dyan?
So shouldn't
Di
that
ba?
be explicitly stated in the bill?
Well, kasi there are rules of court that are being observed dito eh, di ba? So mali kasi yung perception na just because you are in the place where that drug sale is being if you believe what Rupi Biason interprets, then tama siya, no? Pero hindi yun, that's not the intent of the law. Remember,
It's not what I believe or I don't
no
believe.
police,
I'm
no
just
police,
asking. Yeah, I'm
no
just
police
asking, Congressman.
officer, yeah,
Kasi
no
when you
police
say immediate
officer
vicinity,
can charge you for anything unless you have done an unlawful act. Remember that,
right.
di ba? So if you have done an unlawful act, then all other presumptions will come into play. In that example that you used, na meron nagbebentahan dyan, di ba? At nandiyan dyan yung mga tao, pwede naman tanungin ng police lang, what are you doing here? Do you know these guys? Ay, hindi ko kilala yan eh. O sige, okay, hindi mo kilala. Ikaw, kilala mo to. No, ito.
Okay.
What if may witness nagsabi, kausap ni Ace yang kanina, yung hinuli nyo, kasi they were together in the same car. Diba? Okay, kung gano'n mag-witness siya. Kung wala, di nakawala yung hinuli natin that he is really involved. Diba? So kaya nga may presumptions eh. And only after the facts to be proven or proven facts are done, then it will now give rise to a presumption. Yun. It's basically, and by the way, until now he has not withdrawn his support for the bill. Until now, he's still the author. In fact, in the approved version, he's still the author.
Okay, that's what he says. So,
I know. That's why sometimes, di ba? Sometimes you have to be discerning. Di ba? You have to look at, kasi it's not, it's very easy to criticize. It's very easy to criticize. In fact, I've been answering all these criticisms. Sabi ko nga, wala namang problema. No? If you feel that there is something unconstitutional here, you have a recourse. You can go up to the Supreme Court if this becomes a law. But what we're providing here is not a law that would be advantageous to all of us. You think I will make something like this that could be used to any of my relatives or perhaps any of my friends? I will not allow that. I will not allow that.
All right. Don't you feel that, okay, let's say for the sake of argument, you're saying kailangan may crime committed. There is an act of
Unlawful.
crime committed.
Yeah.
But don't you think that based on the current language of the bill, that this could be easily misinterpreted by those who will be enforcing these amendments? So, for example, let's just say, for example, within the immediate vicinity, how big is this immediate vicinity? 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meter radius, 5 meter radius? Is that immediate? Is that an immediate vicinity?
No, don't look at the word immediate. Don't look at the word immediate. It was just written in the law because, of course, if the guy, your lookout is about 10 kilometers away, how can you now arrest that guy? He's 10 kilometers away from the place where the selling was happening. No, ang ibig lang sabihin noon is that yun na nga, sinasabi ko, nagbebentahan dito sa table na ito, and then on mga 3 tables away, that there's this guy na may kausap sa cellphone at sinasabi, okay na, nabebenta na. Kasi you see, the drug lords are using dummies eh. Diba? They're using dummies. And yung mga dummies na yan, because of their desire to earn, no? They're doing it not for themselves alone. They're doing also for their bosses. Ito nga yung drug lords eh. How can we now run after the drug lords? Di ba? That's a big question mark. Now, they can say anything they want in this bill. No, I have no problems with that. In fact, I myself, when I was reviewing it, this is not a perfect legislation, by the way. And I must admit, no?
But it's already approved.
Yes,
But
it is already approved. Yeah, in fact, it was amended, no, by the members. So talagang merong agam-agam, merong pangamba, no, ang ating mga tao kung paniniwalaan nila yung mga sinasabi ng kritiko. Lalong-lalo na, no, in the last 2 days there were, I think, 2 or 3 newspapers or media outlets, no, that came out with a story saying presumption of guilt in the House of Representatives, House Bill number 7814, already approved. Saan kami nagpasa ng presumption of guilt? Diba? Isn't that, I'm sorry to say this, but isn't that a stupid headline saying that, it's as if they're saying that 189 members who voted in favor are all stupid because we passed something that is against the law. Diba? Another headline carries the there's no more presumption of innocence of a person, the constitutional guarantee of presumption of innocence violated in this House Bill 7814. Sige nga, hanapin nga nila in any of the sections that in the bill that we are proposing, if there was something like that, or it's written the way it appears to be like that. Oh, definitely not. Remember, Barnaby, 17 Congress pumasa na ito. 18 Congress, pumasa na ulit ito. Ang kasama namin, gumagawa ng batas na ito, ang kasama namin dito, DOJ. Lawyers from DOJ, lawyers from PIDEA, lawyers from NBI, lawyers from PNP. They're helping us craft this law. Plus, lawyers from the House who are legal luminaries, members of Congress who are legal luminaries. And merong presumption dito of this has passed through scrutiny both in the 17 and 18 Congress. And now you're telling me because the within the vicinity is already napakababaw naman natin kung ganun yung paniniwalaan nating statement nila. Diba? Those criticizing this, yeah.
All right, okay. We're running out of time, so I just want to ask you one last question because we're talking about the critics, of course, but I think your biggest critics right now are the senators who are supposed to craft a counterpart bill for this to become a law, and they're saying, a number of them are saying, this will not pass the Senate. What is your reaction?
That's their opinion. Maybe they haven't read this yet, no? You have to. I read the statement of Senator Ping. No? I read the statement of Senator Drilon and Senator Soto. In fact, it's quite fair that they issued those statements, no? So that there could be some semblance of democracy here. Kasi we don't naman want to ram this down the throats of the senators. They have perhaps they can come up with a better version, and we don't mind. And I'm sure the legal luminaries there like Frank Drilon, Coco Pimentel, those that understood, itong itong legal presumptions na to, would definitely agree with this. That's the way I look at it. I may be wrong, Again, I will not argue with them. I'll just wait for their version, kung ano yung version nila, because we have to help our law enforcers run after the big time personalities in this illegal activity of drugs. How else can we run after them? Diba?
So you think that it's possible to have a Senate version and then a final version of the House and the Senate version?
Yeah, I'm hoping that they will see the light at the end of the tunnel so that they can support this particular. Let me just state for the record that 2 Congresses has passed, several lawyers has reviewed, DOJ has joined us in crafting, in finalizing the version of this bill. We've used jurisprudence as our basis. We've used legal statutes, laws, even our revised penal code allowed the use of presumptions in the case, for instance, of libel. There's also a presumption of malice in a libel case. In the case of rebellion, in revised penal code, meron din yan. We also conform with the United Nations International Fight Against Illicit Drugs. because they were the ones who proposed the use of legal presumptions. So I am hoping and praying that the senators in their wisdom, no, will also come up with something like this, perhaps a better version, so that we can harmonize our version and their version. But at the end of the day, no, magkaroon tayo ng ganitong potent legal tool. Okay? At hindi si policeman, hindi si PIDEA, hindi si fiskal ang magsasabing si Barnaby ay guilty for a crime that he was presumed to have committed. No. At the end of the day, you will have your day in court, due process will be followed, presumption of innocence will be followed. At the end of the day, it is still the wisdom of the court that will say whether you are guilty or not guilty.
All right,
That's
we're gonna have to.
That's
We're
the
gonna have
beauty
to
of
leave
this.
it there. We're gonna have to leave it there, Congressman. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will follow developments in this story. I'm sure that we will hear from the senators as this bill goes up to the Senate. Again,
Yeah.
thank
Please,
you so
please
much.
give them please give them time to read this first. Kasi if they just listen to or read the newspapers, then they're getting it wrong.
Yeah. All right. So that's Congressman Robert Ace Barbers, the main author of the controversial House Bill 784. Thank you.
Thank you,
Controversial.
Barnaby.
I think
Salamat.
that's a neutral description, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. In fact, you can name it whatever, but I'm fine with it. Okay lang, that's part of my job. I'm the chair of the Committee on Drugs, so wala akong choice.
All right. Thank you. Thank
All
you for
right.
your time Saturday evening, and thank you so much for everyone who tuned in this episode of Viewpoint. Do catch us live here on Now You Know's Facebook page, Twitter, and YouTube channel every Saturday at 6 in the evening. For updates on our upcoming episodes, please join our Facebook group. Just search for Viewpoint on Now You Know. Again, this has been Viewpoint, Now You Know.